If you want to sit there and maybe a little easier, hopefully we'll have better success with the sound system than Senator Bryan had in his meeting. It seems to be working. Can y'all hear okay out there? All right. Yeah. So today we're going to follow up on our prior meeting on ABC and have Department of Revenue kind of go over some of their findings. They left the first meeting and did a little bit of exploring and investigating and trying to come up with some different ideas and some proposals and just some numbers on some of the issues we discussed in the first meeting. So I'm going to recognize Commissioner Graham, and he can turn it over to Meg if he has it. Try the other way. There you go. And then push that little button in the front. Just push it. No, push it down. There you go.
There I go. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I like the microphone set up much better than Senator Bryan does. Since the last meeting, we've taken some time to do some preliminary number crunching. We've had several staff members do some investigating and talking, and we have some what I would call fairly rough estimates to kind of go through some of the different options that you all discussed last time you were here, just to give you kind of a 30,000-foot idea of what we think the costs associated with the different options are. One update about the warehouse: we're continuing to operate. We've been operating since the last time we were here. I think when we were here last, we were probably 160,000 cases backlogged, which was, almost 3 weeks worth. As of Wednesday of last week, before the holiday, that backlog was at 97,000, which is, roughly 5 or 6 days worth of shipping. And so they've been working 5 days a week, 10-hour shifts for several weeks, several months now, and they've been able to reduce the backlog by a good bit. We continue to see pretty high demand with ordering. I think the demand for October was just a little below what we had predicted, but it was still pretty high. So the sales volume has continued to remain strong here in Mississippi, and of course we're in the holiday season now, which is traditionally a very high volume for us as well. But the warehouse workers have worked really hard, and they're getting the backlog down, and so we're continuing to see it come down.
As far as the ship cases, are you still projecting to ship out 4.1 million this year? Roughly.
We have a rolling number right now. For the last 12 months, we're over 4 million. And so December, we're expecting to be strong. So we would anticipate it'll be over 4 million for the calendar year.
What did you do the year prior?
I think it was 3.8 million, roughly. Does that sound about right? It's about 17 to 20% higher this year, I think, is what we'll probably end up at.
Okay.
It's about 3.8 million last year, I believe.
About 3.5.
3.5, I'm sorry. So, okay. And with that, we're going to go through the list real quick and, of course, entertain any questions you have along the way and see what comes from our report.
Good morning. Just as a kind of a brief discussion about what we looked at, we kind of tried to look at it in two different buckets, so to speak. The first bucket would be the Department of Revenue maintains the ABC, and then the other bucket would be to remove the ABC operations from the department. And if you look at it from the perspective of leaving that ABC with the Department of Revenue, there's, as we see it, three primary options that are available. The first option would be just to modernize the current ABC operations. We looked at that in pretty much two phases. The first phase would be to replace our warehouse management system along with our order picking system and storage racking and some new equipment that we would need. Also to provide climate control for the current warehouse. We sustained significant issues and due to the fact that it's not climate controlled except for the 25,000 square foot wine room. So we looked at it from that perspective. And that phase one cost, which would include, again, the warehouse management system, a new order picking system, new racking, climate control for the warehouse, and the equipment that we would need, like forklifts and stock pickers, that cost roughly is estimated to be around $14 million, with a recurring annual cost of about $2 million associated with that. The second phase that we looked at in modernizing the ABC warehouse would be to expand the existing warehouse by about 100,000 square feet. That cost is estimated to be in the neighborhood of $20 to $30 million for an expansion of 100,000 square feet to the existing warehouse. In addition to that, which we really didn't delve into a whole lot, but you could potentially construct a new warehouse. And in talking with some people, we could estimate a cost of that to be in the neighborhood of $150 to $200 per square foot for the size for a warehouse construction. And that would be construction only, it would not include land acquisition. And your land acquisition would vary depending upon where you would site that new warehouse. The second option in leaving the Department of Revenue in control of the ABC operations would be to outsource the warehouse and distribution with a third party. We estimate that to be in the neighborhood of $3 to $5 per case to hire a third party to operate the warehouse at a cost of $12 to $20 million annually, as long as we're in the 4 million case range. There would be a savings with that of about $4.8 million from a reduction in staff. The third option we looked at was to remove wine from the ABC control and retain spirits. There's an initial cost of $12 million, similar to what we have in the modernizing, because that would be for a new warehouse management system, order picking system, equipment, that kind of thing. A recurring annual cost, again, of around $2 million. A reduction in staff of an annual savings of about $1.5 million. And a projected loss in annual revenue from the markup from wine of approximately $32 million. And then the second big bucket that we looked at is to remove the ABC operations from the Department of Revenue. And there's two primary options in that bucket, we believe. One is to create the Mississippi Alcoholic Beverage Control Authority, which would be kind of a quasi-governmental corporation similar to the lottery. I think we talked about that in the last meeting. We would anticipate that the costs there would be similar to what we have under modernizing the ABC facility, and potentially the outsourcing costs could also be looked at, whether or not they would choose to operate the facility directly or outsource that with a third party. Our current ABC Liquor Distribution Center budget is $6.2 million. It would be expected that this number would increase if operated by an authority or a quasi-governmental corporation. And the second option under that bucket of remove ABC operations from the department would be to completely abolish the ABC and to privatize all wine and spirits distribution. And just what we have in that would be an annual loss in revenue of, at the current FY 2020 numbers, of about $89 million to the general fund and $9 million to the Department of Mental Health. And that is based on 2020 numbers and does not account for the annual 5 to 8% growth we see in normal times. Of course, that number is significantly higher this year, but that's what we've been seeing in recent years, is a 5 to 8% growth.
Okay.
Got a question about that.
Go ahead.
Megan, just since you're just on that topic, privatizing also, you didn't include the numbers. That would also be the similar reduction in staff with that, correct?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That would be the $6.2 million budget that we spend would also go away, correct.
Okay, and that also assumes that the entire 27.5% markup does not carry forward as some type of tax.
That is correct.
Correct.
That is correct. You could absolutely do some type of increase in tax for that. Or, you know, but that's under existing statutes. If we're not operating, then we wouldn't be charging the markup. That is correct.
Okay. On modernizing ABC operations, you have phase one cost at $14 million, which would bring in a new warehouse management system, order pick system, and installation of climate control for warehouse. Are you assuming you're going to climate control the entire warehouse?
Yes.
Okay. Some of the, I've gone and toured several different warehouses, and it seems like a section of it is climate controlled to an extent for wine, and the rest of the warehouse just has lots of fans kind of blowing through there. Is it, so you're talking about actually heating and cooling the entire 220,000 feet?
It would be about 200,000 feet, yes. 200,000 square feet, yes.
All right. And then your phase two cost of $20 to $30 million is to add an additional 100,000 square feet to existing warehouse. On construction of a new warehouse at $150 to $200 a square foot, is that what you receive from construction companies or from?
That's information we received from DFA and talking with Glenn Cornbreck with DFA, that we could expect those to be our construction cost.
Okay. That seems a little high, but.
That would be, he said it would be actually around 120 if you did a non-climate controlled facility, but if you do climate controlled, it would go up to around $200 per square foot. He said we certainly, that would be building something similar that we have today, which is those concrete panels that are just tilted up concrete panels. There are cheaper construction materials that are available to do something like some type of metal building or something like that, but there's inherent risks in those types of construction materials with the type of product that we carry that we would have to consider.
Okay. All right. On your outsourcing the warehouse and distribution, so you're estimating $3 to $5 per case to hire a third party to operate warehouse. Does that include the shipping in that, or is that just the actual labor of managing warehouse?
I believe that's going to probably be just the actual labor of the warehouse. Certainly on the higher end of $5, I believe you probably could find somebody that could to do both. We kind of got those estimates a few years ago. We did kind of a request for information and tried to gather some information about the interest in doing something very similar to this. And those were the ranges of numbers that we were given, and some would be interested in doing warehousing and distribution. Some companies would be interested in just doing like the warehousing side, but I would suggest if you do that you issue that as one package to warehouse and distribute.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you're looking at 12 to 20,000 minus 4.5 or 4.8 million in annual savings, why is there a reduction in 4.8 million but our budget's 6.2 million if you outsource the warehouse and distribution?
We have some budget that's associated with the administrative side of the ABC, and that's the difference.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if it was that or just if we're going to still maintain the utilities and maintain some of the regular recurring cost on.
Most of the responses that we got would not be interested in using our existing facility, would be constructing or acquiring something to use because our existing facility is not optimal.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Removing wine, and I see the asterisk down here that you said that basically you're looking at a reduction in revenue of $32 million, but that's assuming that you're basically taking away the markup altogether. You're not
Correct.
Allocating a different tax structure if you do wind up removing wine from ABC control. in looking at all the things that we have discussed over the prior meeting and your follow-up to this meeting, is there anything that you've seen or that you found out that is a revelation as to how we're operating that would be different, that you'd change, or that you think may help improve ABC? I mean, it's kind of a open-ended question, but I just, either you or Commissioner, if y'all kind of seen some things that you think you may be able to, you would be able to adopt that would help. Just
Microphone. There it goes. I'm sorry. Since I've been on the job for about 4 months, and we've changed a lot of small things over those 4 months. I don't think there's, other than the fact that the equipment in the warehouse is just in really poor condition currently. There's nothing that's really jumped out at us over how other places are doing. Other than that, there's just a multitude of options and a number of ways you can do it, and probably a number of ways you can do it successfully. And as policymakers, you all, I think, have the hard decision to make. But no, as far as operations, there's been nothing that, these guys have been doing this for the last 6 or 7 years at different times, looking at the different options. And so I think they've already looked at most of the options that have been discussed here, and they've requested information on all the different options. I've sat in meetings with these warehouse employees and said, yeah, we've had these meetings before. So I think they've considered most of everything that has been discussed here. And so I don't think anything has come out revelationally for us as, oh, we can change this or that and just fix everything. And I think that goes back to maybe my comments the last time we were here. Prior to COVID, the warehouse was operating as you would expect it to, given the conditions it was in. Post-COVID, our weaknesses have been very much on display, which is we have a capacity issue in the current warehouse and current layout with the current equipment that we have. Without COVID, I think we would still be sitting here discussing a problem that had not reached a head yet, but because of COVID, I think it really pushed us forward with the problems we've had. So absent COVID, I don't think we would really, the conversation today would be a lot different, because all the restaurants and bars and everybody would be getting their orders next day just like they had for years, and we probably wouldn't see the weaknesses highlighted as much as they have due to COVID. So really, I think these guys have done a really good job over the years of considering all the different options and exploring some of the different options. And as policymakers, you all will have to make a decision on how you want to handle things going forward. And fortunately or unfortunately, COVID has really highlighted some of the weaknesses that the department's been talking about for years. Okay. Meg may have something else to offer to that.
all right. You have a question?
Chris, you've been on the job Commissioner, I'm sorry about that. I got used to that. But you've been on the job now about 4 months, did you say? Is that right?
Yes, sir. I think that's probably 5 months now. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think it would be beneficial for us to understand, and again, some parts of this year, anyway, maybe most parts of this year have been exceptional. But how much on 5 months, with 5 months on the job, how much of your effort, your energy, your focus, your time has been devoted to ABC issues? If you can just give us an approximate percentage, just to help me estimate that. I
stopped billing hours a long time ago, and I'm thankful for not having to bill hours any longer, although I still work really hard. I don't have to keep up with every minute of my day, but given COVID and everything that's happened, I would say a fair amount of our time has been dealing with different ABC issues. Although the department does a whole lot of things, so it has not dominated my time, but it has taken a fair amount of our time and energy.
Yeah. Senator Carter?
If we made the decision to modernize the current warehouse, how would that affect operations? Would the warehouse still be able to function?
We think so. You would have to do it in stages. You couldn't come in and do it over a weekend. And so we have talked at length with the director of the warehouse, and we do think we would be able to continue operations. You would have to tweak some things over a short period in terms of ordering. But we've taken that into account. But no, you would not shut the warehouse down, and you would most likely have to just do it in stages.
Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the lines, if you were to do a new warehouse, what is there? Have you taken a look at the value of the current warehouse, or is there a market for that building?
It was appraised within the last couple of years, and I probably have that number right in front of me. I think it was probably in the $20 million range. And so I would think that where that facility is, there could potentially be some interest, but it was appraised for $26,270,000 a couple of years ago. So I would imagine that you would have some interest in that size building. Certainly located in Madison County in that area probably would be of some interest, but I believe somebody would have to expend a good bit of money to also renovate it and get it in a good working order.
Right. And then if you were to remove the employees from the personnel board, and obviously there'd be an increase in cost because we want to be competitive. We got Amazon coming in, you have all these other big logistic companies coming in. Have you given any thought to what that additional personnel cost might be?
A little bit. In some of the numbers that I gave you about modernizing the facility with that $14 million number, there is a number in there to increase labor pay by approximately $7,000 annually to compete with local businesses. So that number is built into that $14 million, as well as an increase associated with some type of productivity pay option for us, which is very standard in this type of environment to have a productivity pay element to that. And so those two numbers are built into the estimate that we've given you. So yes.
Thank you. Senator Michelle.
Thank you. Meg, you mentioned in scenario number 2 that one option would be to expand the warehouse by 100,000 feet. Is there adjacent land available to do that?
We do believe that we have enough land that we could do that where we are. We have a parking lot, an employee parking lot that comes around to the back of the building that could be used, as well as there's a bump out there where the wine room is built that could be extended all the way down, and then we could do some parking in the front of the building. So we do believe that if not quite $100,000 square foot, we could add something very close to that size where we are.
Putting aside the potential logistic problems, there is a facility there that I know you've looked at.
Yes.
Across the street. What's the size of that building that is on the market for sale?
I believe it's around 55,000 square feet.
And there were 2 appraisals performed on that, just to give us an idea of what the existing building could be bought for per square foot versus the 200. What were the 2 price ranges on that?
They were asking just over $4 million for the purchase of that building. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember what our appraisal came in at. It was, I think we were around $1 million difference between their appraisal and our appraisal.
Would 50,000 feet solve your problems? Or I know if you were going to build something, you'd start with 100, but what kind of relief would that give you? At $4 million versus $20 million sounds good to me, and it's already built. I'm scared to death to think how long it would take the state to build a building. By the time we hire the architects and engineers, and I don't think we'd be seeing any relief. Yeah. What kind of relief would that give you? I know there'd be logistical problems because could you move some of the spirits in one building, and you still, Chris, as you told me before the meeting, you still have the wine and spirits going to the same locations. So what kind of a nightmare would that be to work out of 2 buildings?
We've looked at that fairly closely, and we think logistically that would be pretty difficult for the department. But obviously, if that's what the legislature chooses to do, we'll make it work. But logistically, it would be difficult, I think, to operate across the street from each other. There's not an easy way to divide it up in a space that's only You said
I think it's
55,000?
55,000 square feet, if I'm not
Square feet.
mistaken. I believe
And
that's
so I do
correct.
think logistically, it would not give us as much relief as we would probably need.
But it would be better than nothing. I would add that. I mean, yeah, it certainly would relieve some of our,
How long has it's been empty for a couple of years?
yes.
Senator Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, for information for the committee, I did receive a text from a constituent who is doing 10,000 additional square foot to a beer distributor. Heated and cooled, $110 a square foot, so that figure may be a little bit high.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Yes. Excuse me. Question is this. We have, and I know I speak for several folks on this committee and other legislators when I say this, but we have received numerous complaints, as, like I said, many of us have, across the state from different package stores, businesses, just throughout this whole process. And I have heard reports that there has been, and I don't necessarily blame them, but some businesses have figured out ways to try to game the system, to stack up inventory, to keep maybe your smaller guys from getting inventory. What efforts, Meg, if you could comment, have been made, if any, to help some of these smaller guys and to help evenly distribute this product across the state?
So the first thing that we did relatively early on in the pandemic, when we started seeing large increases in orders, the first thing that we did was to remove the edit button capability from our ordering system, so that what we were seeing is that people were going in, because we had a lot of product that was in high demand, because it was not nationally, there was not large quantities of it available. So when it would come in, we had a relatively small handful of package stores that were watching for that inventory to appear, and they were ordering large case quantities of that amount, and then because they knew they had about a week at the time before that order would be shipped, then they would hold it in their order, and then they would, what we believe was happening would be that they would contact a related or a friend and say, I'm fixing to drop 20 cases of XYZ, it's going to hit inventory, go in and pick it up, and that kind of thing. So they were gaming the system with their orders. So we removed the ability for them to edit an order. So once they place an order and it goes into a reserve status, it cannot be changed. It can be canceled, but it cannot be changed. The second thing that we did, that seemed to help for a little while, and then we were still seeing people snatch up every case of some products that would come in, and they would literally be gone within a minute or two. Once after the delivery was made and we would receipt it into inventory, it would be gone within a minute or two. So we created the ability for us to limit the number of cases of a given item for the first 24 hours. So for the first 24 hours, we put limits on how many cases you could order of that product, so that we could ensure that everybody would have an opportunity to order some of that product before it would be all reserved. So we've done that. And most recently, not entirely related, but kind of related, we sent out a notice to all of our permittees that we were going to start with some random shipments of all orders that you had in the system, and so that you needed to be prepared that you could be drawn essentially, and that everything you have ordered would ship in one day. And so that did cause some orders to be canceled and some permittees to stop placing orders because they had a gracious plenty of orders in the system that they were going to have to receive all in one day and pay for all in one day. So we did do that, and that we did see that make some degree of help in the cases that were being ordered. So it did allow us, I think, to catch up, as Chris mentioned, in November. We did do a good bit of catching up with the outstanding orders, and I think that played into that. So we are trying to make sure, again, that if you order it, you're going to get it unless you cancel the order, and then we limit the number of cases that you can get of high demand product.
Okay. And I've got to ask you the same question I asked Commissioner a minute ago. How much of your time is devoted to ABC operations?
Well, I would imagine it's a higher percentage than the commissioner due to the fact that his scope is much greater. But I would say for me, probably 40% of my time is probably devoted to ABC.
And what are your other duties other than ABC?
My other duties are the business tax area, which is primarily sales tax and use tax, the local levies, as well as the petroleum taxes. Our two interstate compacts that relate to big trucking with International Registration Plan and IFTA, International Fuel Tax Agreement. And then I also have responsibility for the audit, the in-state audit function in our 8 district offices.
And then although you may have become some type of expert in the ABC, alcoholic beverage control arena, just by years of on the job, your background is in tax, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a degreed accountant, and I grew, as I say, I grew up in the agency in tax.
Thank you.
For Senator Blackwell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a number of discussions about wine and grocery stores and increasing the number of permits that a store could have. If something like that were to occur, what's the warehouse's ability to serve those additional customers? And I'd probably say if something like that happened, you'd probably have an influx of at least 500 additional licensees or permittees. How would that impact the warehouse?
One of the biggest actual impacts will be for our enforcement and permitting departments to handle that influx of new permittees. And we believe that wine and grocery stores, while it will increase significantly the number of permittees that we ship to, and I think initially there will be there will be some degree of increase in getting people stocked, inventories in place. I don't think it will have a huge impact on increasing sales on a permanent basis. We're just going to move sales from, a certain degree of sales will be moved from package stores to grocery stores. So I think it will increase it, but I think the initial push will be the biggest demand for us. And so what we're doing right now already is developing a system that will allow us to do dedicated delivery days for our permittees. So instead of everybody being able to order 5 days a week and get a shipment 5 days a week under normal shipping times, that we will be implementing some type of delivery schedule. And certainly if we go to wine in grocery stores, that would be even more important that we have a dedicated delivery schedule.
So if I understood you correctly, you said you don't really see a big demand for increase in overall sales, but you see a shift going from the traditional retail stores to the grocery stores. So therefore, the retail stores are going to be negatively impacted because they won't have the sales, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Well, I think that there's certainly yes, I think there will be some sales that will be lost to package stores that will move to grocery stores.
All right. Are you familiar with Tennessee, the number of package stores that closed because of wine and grocery stores?
I don't have it with me, but yes, we have, in doing this research, we have talked at length with Tennessee about their experiences in moving wine to grocery stores.
And now they have a cap on the number of licensees that they permit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know who I'm going to address this question or comment to, but I'm saying it half jokingly but half serious. We're about to get one of the largest distributors and processors of goods in the world coming to our back door in Madison County, less than 5 or 6 miles away. And my question is, has anyone given any thought to consulting with Amazon to see, as we are about to make this important decision, if there are some suggestions or observations or ideas that they might have, since they do this stuff a lot better than anybody else in the world at this point, that we could utilize as part of our trying to solve this problem.
We've not had any discussions with them, but we have talked to a number of different vendors in doing our research, but I don't think we've had any specific discussions with Amazon.
Any other questions, Senator Warren?
I've got one.
Go ahead.
You look like my cohort over here's got a lot of numbers on a page. It looks scary, so I won't, he might ask a hard question. I've got hopefully an easy one. Do we have any idea, Deputy Commissioner, as far as, we've got what, approximately 3 million people in the state of Mississippi? Is that right, 2.9?
It's around 3 million population, that's correct.
Do we have any idea at what point we've reached our saturation point as far as demand goes in the state?
I don't have any information on that.
And there
no.
may be somebody else who could in the audience, I don't know, in the industry that could comment on that. But my point is, I don't know how many do we? You said 4.1 million cases. Is that what you said earlier?
That's correct.
Is what we're on
For this year.
For this year, 3.8 last year, roughly 3.5 last year. Do we have any idea what Alabama does per capita, what Arkansas does per capita, Tennessee, those types of things? I'm trying to figure out if we're meeting our demand, what the demand, and in order to get that, you got to really know what the demand is. And the best way I know how to do that is to maybe look at populations of surrounding states and see what they do.
We certainly can do that. I don't have that information in front of me.
All right. Thank you.
We do have I don't think I have the sheet with me, and I apologize, but we do have a historical list of the number of cases we've done every year, and you can see a linear growth, and I don't think it is really, I think it's been a constant, growth over the years, and so you could probably use that also as just what we could expect. This year is a lot different. I think it would be a very high uptick, but if you can look at historical numbers and come up, I think, with a reasonable estimate just for what we've seen over the years. And as far as a ceiling, though, I think she's correct, and Chairman's obviously correct. We could look at other states and see if their growth patterns have been similar and kind of where they are as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and with the committee's permission, is there anybody in the industry here that has any data on that could comment? And there may not be, but I figured we're here for a hearing. I see a few industry guys out in the audience, but I think we have somebody. Yeah, Steve, if you would stand up, introduce yourself, and if you have,
You can come up to that.
yeah,
podium
there's
right
a
there.
podium right here. Just walk around. And just we'll bear with you. We know we put you on the spot, but I honestly appreciate your willingness to speak, because the whole purpose of these meetings is for us to gather information, and if you're here with information, we want to hear it.
Yes, my name is Bob Crawford. I'm with United Johnson Brothers of Alabama and Mississippi. We have a brokerage here as well that does spirits and deals with the ABC, but we do business in 14 different states. Specifically, Mr. Chairman, your question was...
Hold on one sec. Can y'all hear him okay? Everybody hear him? I don't know if your mic's on or not, but that's outside my department.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Your specific question about per capita consumption for Alabama, there's almost 4 million people in Alabama, and the consumption of wine alone, I believe, was your question. Is that correct?
Well,
I can
wine
give
and
you
alcohol.
wine for sure.
Yeah.
Wine's it's 5.6 million cases. So per capita drinking in Alabama of wine is a little bit lower than surrounding states. Same with Georgia. We do business there. I can't quote it, but I would say that your per capita in the southeast is lower than Alabama and lower than Mississippi, because Alabama's lower than Georgia.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
do we know what our per capita in Mississippi is?
I do not know what your per capita in Mississippi is. I think it was 1 million cases of wine roughly a year, per capita of 3.5 million.
About 40% of our sales cases come from wine. It's about 40% of our sales cases come from wine, which represents about 36% of our revenues from wine.
Okay.
But about approximately 40% of our sales are wine.
4% of our case volume or
For-
sales?
It's 40% case volume, about 36% of revenues are from wine.
Okay. And how much did you say Alabama does? Wine?
Alabama has almost 4 million people, and it's almost 6 million, it's 5.6 million cases of wine alone per capita consumption.
5.6 million cases of wine annually in Alabama. And we're at, if I did your math right, around 1.6
0.64.
million.
That's
That's
correct.
some
Now-
Tate County math in my head, but
Per the Wine Institute, some numbers that were, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but from discussions years ago, we are one of the lower volumes of wine sales in Mississippi, as states go for just wine sales.
and I guess where I'm going with that is, we have one government-controlled operation and one warehouse in the state. We can only do what we can do. And so, do we know what the demand actually is? In one way, this is certainly not an exact science, but to look at the state of Alabama right next door, we've got 3 million, they've got, 4 million people in Alabama?
Yes, sir.
So they're, 1 million people more than us, roughly a third bigger than us, but they do more than 3 times the amount of sales in wine in the state of Alabama? Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Thank you.
Michelle. Bob, you don't mind
Sorry.
Thank you. You have wine and grocery stores in Alabama, and we just passed an initiative process in Mississippi to legalize medical marijuana, and it passed with over 70% of the vote. If we had an initiative in Mississippi and on the wine and grocery store sales issue, and it passed, looking back at the history of Alabama, do you think it would be better if the legislature addressed the regulation of it, or the grocery stores put an initiative together and put it exactly like they wanted it to be?
This is only my opinion, Mr. Chairman and Senator. I think that if you look at the states around us in the South, most of them that are control states have chosen to just control the spirits part of alcohol, and some have chosen to change the spirits part based off of percentage of volume. So the newer items like these ready-to-drink cans, High Noon, et cetera, that are low in alcohol, some of them are allowing those to go into grocery store as well as your low alcohol, which you currently have. I think that Mississippi is the last state to actually control both spirits and wine. I think the grocery stores as a whole, let me rephrase that. I think Mississippi is probably one of the last states to not offer higher proof wines in the grocery stores. Sorry. I think that the grocery stores would like to have that opportunity, but I also think that it hurts the package stores that are currently existing. To your point, I do think that the sales will transfer and change. In Alabama, I can speak of what happened to us, and in Tennessee, we did see a change, but we did see an overall increase because they work at a lower margin on sales, so the retails will change. They add consistent programming. They tend to focus on only the higher volume brands, to where the package stores are then relegated to specialty orders or high-end orders. It's different in each state, and we operate in 14 different states, and whatever legislation sets the rulings is how the distributors usually work and operate. It's similar to the beer wholesalers and distributors. It can go either way. It's how you choose to set the rules and how it most effectively affects your money to the general fund, how your operations are within the ABC board. You can go visit your friends in Alabama all the time, and they do a great job with the spirits over there and distribution, but they do it through state stores instead of independent stores. There's many different ways of doing it, but to answer your question, I feel in my 32 years in the industry, the grocery stores will definitely be pushing, which I know they are currently pushing, for some kind of a passage. It comes down to how many licenses you allow them, and if you allow them one license, they usually don't come. If you allow them multiple licenses, they come in hordes. And again, it's just a different way of doing business. I don't know what the pleasure of the committee is or the goal, so I wasn't really prepared to speak on that. I was more prepared to speak on any questions for how Alabama currently does it versus Mississippi. But
Thank you.
yes, it does change things.
Thank you, Bob.
Anything else?
Thank you. Oh, Senator Horn?
Mr. Chairman, you operate in 14 states,
Yes, sir.
and in your opinion, which state has the best distribution process?
As a private business, it's the one that makes the most money, but I think procedure-wise, I was trying to explain that in my last comment. It's whatever the state tends to want, the distributors will follow the rules and work. We have states that deliver all beer, wine, and spirits together, like Georgia, and states in Alabama that just do the wine and the beer. To a distributor and to one of your options of looking at farming it out to a separate company that would do that for you, a box is a box. It doesn't matter whether it contains beer, wine, or liquor in it. There's a cost to warehousing it and a cost to delivering it, and it has to do with the procedures. I think you mentioned at the start of your comment, you guys are looking at different platforms to improve warehousing and inventory. And a gentleman from the ABC board, his name escapes me right now, 2 weeks ago came to our location in Birmingham, Alabama. We're on an Encompass system, and he came to visit us. And we were very open and transparent and showed him what that system does for us. It's how efficient you are, how many cases and bottles you can run through your system. It's really not a matter of who does it the best. It's what system you use to receive your product, to replenish your product, to get your product loaded, to make your time stops, and also to make your customers happy, whether they're a grocery store or whether they're a package store or a restaurant or a bar or grill. It doesn't really matter to us. It's how efficient you can be, and the more efficient you are, the more money you save, and the more money you save, the more money you make.
Okay, let me rephrase my question then. In which state do you get the optimal operations for your business?
At this current time, I think it would be the state of Georgia.
And why is that?
They do deliver all, it's totally privatized. They deliver all wine, beer, and spirits. And the reason why, I think, I would assume is your next question, why, is because when you look at the customer base, the customer only has to receive one truck from each distributor. They don't have to receive a separate spirits truck, a wine truck, and a beer truck. Traditionally, it's set up where you have wine distributors, beer distributors, and liquor distributors, whether it's a control state or not. In a scenario like Georgia where the distributor is delivering everything, if I happen to sell Jack Daniels and you sold Evan Williams, you would be delivering Evan Williams to all 10,000 accounts. In Georgia, it's probably more like, I think it's don't quote me, 60,000 licensed accounts. They write one check and they get their beer, their wine, their liquor, and they also get their non-alcoholics from that company. So it's more efficient, in my opinion, in Georgia than it is anywhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When you say they deliver it, you mean the private business, not the state?
The private business, yes,
Okay.
sir.
You said they deliver. I just want to make sure the committee understands. You mean the business does that. Senator Blackwell, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. You mentioned beer and wine is sold in grocery stores in Alabama. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And liquor is then sold in retail or package stores. But those, if I'm not mistaken, those stores are owned by the state, are they not?
Yes, there's 177 ABC stores that are owned by the state, and they're operated by state employees.
So a little bit different from our scenario where you have mom and pop owning the store and running it.
Yes,
right?
sir. There are additional in Alabama. They've got legislation that allows you to have a liquor license. You can apply for it as well, and there are over 800 private liquor stores that are similar to what we have here in Mississippi, but they have to purchase from the ABC board. They do not purchase from the distributors. So they tend to have to put their markup on top of the ABCs and a little bit higher retails. Yes, sir.
Right. And then a question for the commissioner. Last session, we passed wine to ship from a vineyard to the home, which I guess is supposed to go into effect January 1st, but have there been any rules?
Retailer, not to the home.
To the retail.
Retailer.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, home
Oh,
to,
I'm sorry.
To the retail.
I'm-
We attempted that, but it,
I understand. I stand corrected. Yeah. From the vineyard to the retailer for purchase. Has the department, are you prepared to issue rules on that, on how that's going to operate?
We have finalized that procedure and are in the process of putting a notice out to all of our permittees to let them know what the process is. I don't think the notice has gone out yet, but it should be any day now.
It should go out tonight, as a matter of fact. We have already posted information on our website to inform taxpayers, we call them taxpayers, citizenry, about what can be done and how they do it. And a notice is to go out tonight to all of our permittees, our package store permittees, to let them know about the process.
Hey, could you, since we're on that, I was going to ask questions about that anyway, because it is coming up. You know, January 1, we're ready to go. At least we're supposed to be ready to go, is my understanding. So comment a little bit exactly, just for the people here, how that's going to work. I know the legislation was rolled out, but can you comment as far as what y'all have done to take the legislation once it was passed? No, I'm sorry. Good point. Does anybody have any more questions for Bob? We don't need to, he did us a favor. We don't need to leave him standing there by himself.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And as a company doing business here, we would offer any information we can from our current business that would help you make the right decision and process, because again, we do it in many states. Anything that you guys need, we would be happy to offer it to help you make the right decision.
Thank you for being willing to speak out. And then, Meg, I think you understood what my question was. Yeah, update us on that process, please.
So essentially, we will, as the bill is laid out, if I want to buy wine, what I would have to do is call the winery, or be at the winery essentially, and place my order directly through the winery and give them the name and information of the package store to which I want that product to be shipped. The winery will then ship that product. You'll pay the winery directly for the wine. Then that winery will have that product shipped to the package store of your choice. The package store then will receive that product, has 2 days to let you know that your delivery has been made. And so when I go in to pick up my wine, we've developed essentially a worksheet that they'll use on our taxpayer access portal, their tab account, that will calculate the markup, the excise taxes that are due on that product, and allow them to enter their whatever their handling fee might be. So it will calculate for them what they need to collect from their customer, and then they will have an account or a way to basically file that online with us to pay the excise taxes and the markup. And then they'll also collect the sales taxes, which will this been remitted with their regular sales taxes for all the other sales for that month. Also, the bill will allow the package store to, if the customer doesn't pick it up within 30 days, the package store then may move that product into their inventory to sell.
Straightforward. Yes, sir.
When does ownership transfer to the purchaser? California sends it, or?
Can you speak up a little bit, Mr. Representative? Everybody needs to be able to hear your question. I know it's going to be a good one.
Tell me at what point in time ownership.
It's green. Senator, can you help the representative, please?
There it is. Thank you. One more time. At what point in time does ownership vest in the purchaser of the wine?
Well, I think it's going to probably depend upon how that transaction is set up between the purchaser and the winery. Generally, it's going to be when that product is delivered.
Okay, I ask you that because one of my stores specifically asked me that question. If it comes to their store and it's broken or
Whose responsibility is it?
wrong product or whatever, whose responsibility is it? If you're saying what you said earlier was if it stays there 30 days, their ownership, I assume, would go back to the store, or how's that going to work?
Well, ownership only moves to the store if the individual doesn't pick up their product within 30 days. So at the time that that delivery is made to the store, it becomes the product of the purchaser. They just haven't picked it up yet. But they have 30 days to pick it up, and then if they don't pick it up, then it becomes inventory to the store.
Okay, and as far as the handling fee, is that just whatever the marketplace will bear?
Correct. It's going to be dependent upon the package store, what they choose to charge for their service. Yes.
That'd be ordinary income like any other.
Correct.
To the store. Thank you.
Meg, one comment that I would, if you could go a little further on that. I remember when we were going through the details of this legislation, there was some language we put in the law that would allow the carriers to report to y'all with the product. So y'all would have some kind of idea. I say y'all, that's DOR, to have an idea what was coming into the state. How has that worked out?
Well, that is a little bit problematic because we don't actually license common carriers. The ABC does not license a common carrier, and so we do have it in there for them to report to us the sales that are coming in. So that is a part of it. We're also requiring the purchaser to give a copy of the invoice to the package store so that we can gather that information that way as well.
In other words, when, we'll use you as an example. When you buy your wine, you walk into the store, you've got to give that, in order to get your case of wine.
I got to give them a copy of my invoice.
And you've been on, ABC's wrong, XYZ winery, you've ordered from their website, they've given you a receipt, you take your receipt into the store, that's how you get your product.
That's right, and I have to have that invoice because I have to know the purchase price of that product in order to calculate the markup. And so they're going to be required to give a copy of their invoice to the package store, and then the package store will actually scan that invoice and attach it as a file when they file with us their return to report the taxes.
Okay. Sounds like we got a process in place, so let's hope it rolls out smoothly on January 1. Yes, sir.
Just some clarifications. If the purchaser of the wine does not pick up the wine and 30 days goes by, and so now the ownership is going to transfer to the store. The store, I would imagine, needs to pay the excise tax and
Correct.
the markup. However, you mentioned you have an invoice, so what is the permittee going to do? Do they need to go online and find out what the wine initially sold for? How does that get resolved?
I'm hoping that won't happen very often, but yes, they'll probably have to contact the winery to gather that information or contact us. If it's a product that we carry, we can provide you that information based on the NABCA ID or code for that product. If it's not a product that we carry, we can probably still assist you in trying to get a price quote for that. So I would imagine contacting the ABC will be what you'll need to do, and we'll work to get a price quote for you if we don't have it.
Is that it? Senator Michelle?
Question for Meg or Chris. I learned a valuable lesson, I won't say everybody did, about the initiative process. Was totally shocked that 70% of Mississippians voted in favor of allowing medical marijuana. With that being said, what also was surprising in that initiative was that the people who got the initiative together got to dictate taxation. If the if the grocery stores came forward with an initiative to sell wine in grocery stores, and in the initiative process dictated that the tax, right now the tax markup is about 27% on a bottle that goes, is that about right? 27% markup from you to the retailer. In the initiative, they said the tax on wine sold in grocery stores shall be 5%. Wouldn't that put a lot of our retailers out of business? And would that have a negative overall effect on the revenue? Is there a happy medium y'all could think of that we could avoid that? Because we don't want our local retailers to go out of business. Because if there's a difference in amount of taxes, there'd be a significant difference in the cost of that bottle in a grocery store versus the package store.
You could certainly change the price by the difference in the percentage. I'm not a constitutional amendment expert, and I don't want to be an initiative expert, but obviously, if it was worded correctly, you could pay less taxes in a grocery store, just as we've seen is most likely going to be the case with the marijuana initiative. But so yeah, I think you could see a difference in price. Of course, the legislature could always go back and visit the markup if that did happen, and change the markup if they wanted to do that. And of course, that would also possibly cost the state some funds as well.
The markup, though, that we could address would not be the markup on the constitutional initiative as I see it. I'm not a constitutional lawyer either. The only thing we could do would then go to reduce the amount at the package stores. That's the way you understand it, which would further reduce the revenue?
That's what I intended to say. I'm not sure what I said, but that's what I intended to say, is you all could change the statutes and change the markup that's in the statute at any time y'all deem fit.
Or the retailer, but if the initiative said, well, what if they said there's no tax on it?
Then y'all would have a difficult decision to make, I believe, if you're going to reduce the markup to 0%. So
okay, thank you.
I think that would be up to you all to look at and decide.
That's a good segue into what I was going to present. This was asked at the prior meeting, and I wanted to get some information to the committee on markups as it relates to control states. 17 of them. The lowest markup in the country is Wyoming with a 17.6% markup. Mississippi comes in at 27.5%. Alabama's at 30%. Idaho's at 87%. Iowa's at 50%. Michigan's at 65%. Montana's at 40%. North Carolina's at 39.5%. Ohio's at 42%. Oregon's at 113%. Pennsylvania's at 30%. Utah's at 86%. Vermont's at 65%. Virginia's at 64%. And West Virginia's at 28% markup. Now, some of these states also have a tax on spirits and wine tax. Alabama's got a 56% tax on spirits. You look at New Hampshire, doesn't have a markup, but they've got a 46% tax on spirits and a 57% tax on wine. And they have a $1.20 per case bailment fee. More than half the states have a bailment fee per case. So it's all across the board. There's not a one size fits all, but I did want to provide that. And if you want a copy of this, let me know and I'll have this printed out for you. So
I have got a follow-up, but there's not one. Is Bob still around? But Bob, you may know this, Meg may, I'm not sure, but this was, the numbers that Senator Harkins just provided with us were controlled states, right? Mm-hmm. Is what this is. I'm interested in the taxing setup of the non-controlled states that are around us, so Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana. Bob, would you know how, for instance, Alabama's tax on alcohol is? Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot again, but I think that would be beneficial to the committee.
Yeah, just speak up.
It's funny that you asked that question, Mr. Chairman. It's at 30% right now, and tomorrow they're having a board meeting to raise it. One of their top
you could get that information to myself or Senator Harkins. It would be good. So when you say 30% in Alabama, is that a wholesale tax?
That's the markup currently.
Okay.
At the ABC board that Josh just quoted.
Okay.
And they're looking at it tomorrow to go, it's on the docket to go to 35.
Well, since they're privatized for the wholesale distribution of wine, how does that look for the wine products? Okay, well, let me clarify that question. Is that an end user retail tax? The 30% is applied to wine and liquor products? Okay, well, what does their tax structure on wine look like?
$4.05 a case, and then there's a local municipality that can be set by their jurisdiction as to what they want, and that can be anywhere from 50 cents to wherever they want to make it.
Okay, thank you.
So the spirits tax on top of the 30% markup, 56% spirits tax is on top of the 30% markup in Alabama?
And if you look at retail comparisons, Alabama's retail on, if you were to take the top 20 selling SKUs, which they're probably no different for Mississippi, they aren't if you look at sales numbers by the ABC. Those Jack Daniels, Smirnoff, all of the high volume selling brands, they're usually $2 to $3 higher in the state of Alabama at retail than they are in the state of Mississippi.
When you say, are you talking about a pint, a fifth, or any product?
My information is based off of the highest sellers, which are generally 175, so larger bottles, yes, sir.
Okay, so what's that? Is that that's a handle? Okay. All right, so you're saying roughly it's $2 to $3 more expensive in the state of Alabama?
Than it is to Mississippi.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I can send you a breakdown.
I think any information that you could provide on the taxing structure of those privatized states in our southeast region would be beneficial. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the committee? Well, Meg and Commissioner, thank y'all for your time. I think this will be probably we may have some more questions, but I could venture to say that maybe the first of the session, we'll probably have a bigger meeting and allow to kind of rehash all the things we talked about over this off-season to the full committee and try to come up with some ideas. But these hard numbers are pretty good indicator of what needs to take place. Do you know offhand when the last time there's been a significant investment in the facility?
(2003) was the last significant investment. That's when we constructed the fine wine room that we have. In 2012, 13, I believe it was somewhere in that time frame, we got for 2 years, we got a $1 million appropriation that could be used only on the building, and we did that to, it was 14, 15, I'm sorry, I was off, but we got $1 million each year out of capital expense funds that we could use for renovation, and we did that primarily with our conveyor system. But the last significant influx would have been when we constructed the fine wine room in 2003.
And how much was that? 14 million? Is that what you said? Or was that 2014 you were talking about that?
I don't know what I'm sorry, I don't have the cost from the
That's
wine
fine.
room in front of me.
I was just, you can find out what that was.
I can.
Appreciate it.
Megan, one quick question. This is easy. Y'all commented on this last time. How many warehouse employees do we have?
In the warehouse, we have right at 100 employees. It's split between a day shift and a night shift.
Okay.
And the administrative, but yeah, we have right at 100 employees at the ABC warehouse.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you.